Greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that His presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. We continue on into chapter 8 of 2 Kings, and it's another Elisha story, only it's probably more about the Shunammite woman, and you'll recall that she's the woman who talked to her husband, and they built a room above their house for Elisha to stay in when he came to their village. And they were without child, and Elisha announced to her that this time next year she would have a child. And sure enough, she did. And then some time passed, and the boy went out to help his father in the field, and the boy started feeling ill. And so the father sent him home, and he went home, and the boy died. And so the Shunammite woman went and got Elisha, and he brought Elisha home, and Elisha brought the boy, back to life. And so it's a story about her and her family. And so I'll go ahead and pick it up. Well, maybe I'll just tell you the story. And so it's chapter 8 of 2 Kings, and Elisha knew that the Lord was bringing a famine upon the land of Israel, and that it was going to last 7 years. And the Shunammite woman had been so good to him that he warned her about it. Elisha went and told her that she ought to take her family and that they ought to leave, that there was going to be a famine in the land for 7 years. And so the woman listened to Elisha. She got her family and they went and lived amongst the Philistines, and they were okay there for those 7 years. 7 years passed, and she decides that she's going to come home. And it sounds like her husband has probably died at this point, because there's no mention of him. There's just mention of the woman and her son. And so she comes back, and she's going to go before the king, and she's going to make an appeal to get her house back, to get her land back, that it was still rightfully hers. Well, about this time that she's making her appeal to the king, or on her way to the king is actually meeting with Gehazi, the servant of Elisha. Now, you'll remember Gehazi, that he had been at Elisha's side and had been a pretty good guy, it seemed like, until the whole thing with Naaman. But we won't go back into all that. And so Gehazi is there talking to the king, and the king is asking Gehazi about Elisha and wants to hear about the stories of Elisha's ministry. And so Gehazi is telling the king about how Elisha brought the Shunammite woman's son back from the dead. And it's about that time that the Shunammite woman comes in before the king with her son to make an appeal for her house and her land back. And Gehazi can hardly believe it. And he tells the king, this is the woman and this is the boy. And so they have more conversation about it, and the woman is able to appeal. The Shunammite woman is able to ask for her house back and her land back. And the king puts somebody in charge of it and makes sure that she gets her land back, her house back. And the king even goes so far to say, make sure she gets the profit from the crops that were farmed from her land. Couldn't be much during a famine, but still, whatever profit there was from her land, she's going to get paid for it. And so it's a wonderful story of restoration. And the Shunammite woman, she listened to Elisha, she came back, and we see that God was watching out for her all along. And just the timing of it, that Gehazi would be there talking to the king talking to Gehazi, wanting to know about Elisha and all the different activities of his ministry. And here comes the Shunammite woman and with her son. And so I think about all that, and I think, number one, what does it reveal? It reveals to us that God is a God who restores. That God is able to watch over us in times of famine. That God is able to direct us through difficult times. But God is a God who restores. And then the other thing I think about is just how God had Gehazi there talking to the king. I mean, you might call it coincidence, but I suspect that that's just the providential will of God. That God has people, right place, right time, to speak on behalf of his people. So wherever you find yourself scattered today, maybe you're at the front end, and you sense God is telling you, through Elijah, through somebody, hey, it's going to be rough. Might want to think about leaving for 7 years and come back. I mean, maybe you're at that end of it. Maybe you're at the end of the 7 years and you're back. And is your life, your land going to be restored to you? But I just think God is a God who restores. And God is a God who leads, who guides, who directs. And God is a God who is able to put people in place to watch out for us and to make his will possible, if I can say it that way. So wherever you find yourself scattered today, I hope that this story gives you fresh confidence to trust in the Lord, because the Lord restores and the Lord directs and the Lord puts people in the right place at the right time, that his will, his good and perfect will, might be accomplished in our lives. God bless, and have confidence. The Lord is worthy of our trust.